try this inside today. Feeling kind of beat up today in a bit of a way. It's funny, one thing when we do this, all you're doing is you're walking every single day a lot. You're jumping in and out of the water, so you're swimming a lot every day. We're eating fresh food every single day and going to the gym every day. So it's very, very healthy reset. I love it. Love it. Sorry I can't talk to you though. I feel like I could fall asleep, have a nap, but I'm not going to do it. And the sun's out really bright today. It's real bright and real hot. So it's a good time for me to take a break and do this. Sarah's out doing a few things. So, more voices. More voices. Funny, I was watching Side Note, I was watching a thing. Caught a thing the other day. Oh, quick note too before I forget. Since I put my SIM card in my phone, I haven't texted anybody at home. I haven't received or spoke with anybody. I think for 12 days. I'm gonna have a handful of friends and acquaintances a little pissed at me, but oh well. Oh well, nothing's changed. I just haven't been available, that's all. No big deal. But I will be in contact with all my regular people shortly. But anyway, I was thinking the other day that Bill Gates thing. You've got that Bill Gates, that way too rich douchebag friend of Epstein, frequent flyer of Epstein Island. He's actually on videos talking about getting the world's population down. And it's funny, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, alright, so you're a multi-billionaire and you're feeling kind of crowded? Exactly where are you feeling crowded, you piece of shit? Could you imagine that? So what's going on? So the curious part of his statements for me are, when you're a billionaire and you're feeling crowded, well, where are you hanging out? What's the real issue What's the real issue going on? What is it you know that the regular people don't know? Why do you feel that there's too many people here with your billions of dollars? You wouldn't have billions of dollars if it wasn't for the people you got it from. In the first place, you loser. But really though, I couldn't imagine being a multi-millionaire, billionaire, whatever, during this lifetime and feeling the planet's just a little too crowded for me. We really need to try to get this population down. That dude should be swinging from a branch. And anybody else in his position that speaks like that. Don't you think? You imagine? Think about it. A billionaire complaining about the population of the planet. How do you know when you've reached that ultimate level of douchebaggery, right? What a tyrant. What a pure tyrant. Hang him! That's all I got to say. Hang him. Alright, let's listen to some voices. Who do we got? One thing I do know is we got voices from the true good people in the world here, right? Who do we got? What do we got? Listen to this. Oh, I marked one as number 1 yesterday, right? To make sure I read it today. Here it is. There we go. So I'll retitle this one Red. And here we go. Listen to this. Do I know what this is about? Nope. We're going to find out. My experiences would start as a child of around 4 years of age, but that's the title of this email. My experiences would start as a child of around 4 years of age, but would continue for many. When I was a little girl growing up in West Auburn, Maine, we had a horse farm and 60 acres of woods behind our 4 pastures. We lived in the country. I was born in 1959, and in my younger years was visited often by what I thought was a nightmare. A gorilla in my window, and I would start screaming. I was so scared. My bedroom was on the 2nd story, and his face took up the whole window. 2nd story, 16 feet? With the next floor, so that's at least 19 feet, right? Sorry. My bedroom was on the 2nd story and his face took up the whole window. For many years I thought I was dreaming it. I had that dream a lot. My mother would find me standing in front of the window screaming, and I think I had a nightmare. Until in recent years when I read that Sasquatch liked to look in people's windows, and it was then I realized that I was not dreaming. They had a approached me in my younger years. I spent a lot of time in our woods, riding my horse, cross-country skiing, and just on long walks and digging for old bottles. We had 2 ponds and a flowing stream about 20 feet or so wide that separated our property from the local ski area. While back there were a lot of eerie silences at times. I remember noticing that it was so quiet, like time stood still. I found a picture that is so what I was looking at 4 years old. Obviously, someone else experienced what I did. All right, there's that photo. Shared. Oh, that's working. Perfect. I don't have to go through the download thing. That'd be a little unnerving, right? At a different time was in 1979. I had some friends that lived in Sebago Lake in Maine. Sebago Lake in Maine. They lived in a cabin in the middle of the woods on a long hilly road only traveled by its residents, so you could go up and down it and not expect to see any other cars. I was driving up there one night. It was curvy, and I was coming around the last bend in the road, and there on the side of the road was an at least 8 to 10 foot tall, huge Sasquatch. He was massive. He had to be 4 feet across, shoulder to shoulder. He was a brownish blonde color, heavy brow, high cheekbones. Skin was dark, looked sort of bearded, and kind of like he had bang fur. Big head. He looked both ape-like and human-like in that he was on 2 legs. Fur looked thick, and I guess about 3 to 4 inches long all over. He just stood there motionless looking at me. I was pretty freaked out when my headlights were on him. We made eye contact and he was not 10 feet from me. I just sped up and flew into my friend's driveway and ran in saying I just saw a huge Bigfoot. Hindsight. Nobody went looking. Nobody in my world talked about Bigfoot back then. Third encounter, Mad Sasquatch, happened in North Gotham, Maine. We had a pig roast up on our hill at our cabin, which was very rustic place. What? We had a pig roast up on our hill at our cabin, which was very rustic. Plastic on the windows, rope handle on the door, metal ladder going to the 2nd floor, which is our bedroom. There was no punctuation in that, all right? I had a friend visiting from Colorado, and my boyfriend and his friends went out on the snowmobiles. We were hanging out inside the cabin, and we started hearing these guttural growls like no noise I've ever heard before or since. It got louder and louder, and then it started making these kinds of screams, and the cabin began to shake, and we could see claws coming through the plastic on the windows. I ran towards the door and put the broom handle through the loop in the door, and as I did, something was pulling and shaking the door on the other side. Every time we changed our position in the cabin, that side would be attacked. We were crazy scared out of our minds. My boyfriend had a gun and bullets, and I, who had never seen one before, suddenly and instinctively knew how to load it. But neither I or the friend, being male, were going to step foot outdoors. We climbed the ladder, and whatever that screeching thing was landed on the roof above us. The screams were the scariest thing you ever heard. Impossible to repeat. Just as we thought we were going to die, we could hear the snowmobiles coming back, and whatever that thing was ran off. We told the guys what just happened, and they went out to look for tracks, and they thought we were crazy until they saw the claw marks on the windows. I moved out to Colorado and spoke to a gal out there of my experiences. She told me she has a telepathic experience through the window with a Sasquatch. She's going up her stairs, and there on the landing between the stairs was a Sasquatch in her window. It said, "We want to communicate with people, but because of our size and scary appearance, they run or shoot at us." It conveyed that they were once dinosaurs and other animals that have gone extinct, and they are here to warn us of what's to come. They had to look enough like us, but also be of a prehistoric man with his survival instincts. I put those experiences out of my mind, buried them until I saw people speaking of their experiences on YouTube, and it all came back to me. Most of the pictures people have taken really don't look like the ones I've seen, except one that gave me an instant flashback. This picture is not mine, but it gave me an instant flashback of what I saw on the hilly road that night, except mine had no trees in front of it. I was not carrying a camera around back then. All right, well, let's have a look at what you put here. There's photo. That seems to be working, right? Excuse me. Oops, hold on a second. How do I get out of there? Then this summer, August 25th, 2019, we randomly stopped on the side of the highway to use nature's facilities in New Hampshire on 95. And there was an opening about 15 feet wide to enter the woods, a good-sized pull-off spot and a little knoll. I went in first and was shocked to see what I did. I realized that it must be a roadkill pull-off spot because there are some blue gloves present. But also there appears to be forest friends who have set up camp structures there to take advantage of this buffet-style dining. I ran back and grabbed my phone and took pictures of the bones, and I zoomed into the structures, hoping to see it better. It was about 20 feet away from my spot, so the clarity is not good, but we appear to have had company that I'm grateful I have not seen at the time, as my daughter went in after me. I said creepy bones everywhere. Sorry, there's a bunch of typos and no punctuation. I think she meant I saw creepy bones everywhere and I was feeling very protective. I was shocked that on a random stop, this is what was there. A reminder, we are still here. These are the pictures I took. All right, this is gonna be tough because I don't know what the pictures are for. Blue gloves, right there, I guess. We'll go to the next picture. Wherever that's going to be, bones. I think there's another picture. And another. That's definitely a little odd there, isn't it? I think. Oh, there's more. That's it. Oh, there's something circled in this one. Yeah, I don't know, I can't see. The circled things, it's kind of funny when people do, oh shit, oopsies, hold on a minute. Excuse me, probably 99.9% of the time, for me only, when people send me photos with circles around something, I never see shit in there, myself. Anyways, carries on. I never told any family members besides my mom, who also thought it was a nightmare about my frequent visitor. I'm an animal lover, and they sensed that. The Sasquatch in my window was enormous. His face took up the whole window, and he used to just stare at me. As a small child, it was horrifying, but I don't believe that one meant me harm because we were 4 feet away from each other, and if he/she wanted to, he could have reached right through and grabbed me. The one in 1979 were shocking to see. 10 feet from me, did not have a menacing face. Just made eye contact, and he didn't move. The one outside the cabin was pissed about something. That was the scariest experience that I'm grateful to have lived through. Kate, thanks. All right, Kate, there you go. Another crazy volley of experiences, right, with photos. There's no shortage of members of this club around the planet, is there? All right, here comes another one. Alaska and California is the title of this email. Hi there, Steve. Don't give my unusual name as to protect others. I gotcha. I'm a member of the Forever Club. I have listened and watched you from the beginning. I've read all of Bobby Short's writings from others all over the U.S., and it is a shame what was done to her. No shit, isn't it? I've tried to write this forever, but fear it's way too long for you. I think I'm ready to go back into the bush again. Since seeing these beings, the fear has really put a stop to a lot of my necessary need to be in the wild. I never seem to be able to find anyone to go with, as my schedules as a registered nurse make it hard, and so have always gone hiking and camping by myself, armed with my 44 Red Hawk and heavy cast loads, or my 45-70. My physical and mental health have suffered because of being too nervous to get out there until, I think, now. I hope there's some missing pieces to someone's puzzle or experience here. I'm sorry it is so long. I remember in the 60s, the night Father, Mother, and I were watching the Ed Sullivan Show, and two cowboys, Patterson and Gimlin, presented the short filming of Patty. Even at high school age, I knew intuitively that Patty was real just by the way she moved. As the years rolled by, that amazing knowledge faded, and it was not a thing I thought at all about. But it was there in waiting. Our family had a cabin at Lake Pillsbury from the end of the 50s and in the 60s. It was a fairly remote area such that we had to pack all the building materials from the boat put in to our property, then haul it all up a hill on a cable and muscle. I mention this only because one day Father and I took our motorboat up a narrow canyon of the lake, which took us to the Rice Fork River that flows into the lake. We were going fishing up creek, so we pulled the boat up, tied it off to a tree. It was late spring and very hot. It had rained the night before, and the creek had risen a bit, evident by smooth, wet sand laying over flat bedrock. Just after we geared up with our poles and lures, and Father had slung his wicker creel over his shoulder, we took a few steps to move upstream, and that's when we saw the track. Just one track. I'd never seen a bear track before, but Father was a bit of a woodsman, so he took the time to show me the toes and the heel and how big they can get. The print was perfect and placed on thin sand over the bedrock so it had not sunken in deeply. I remember that it looked just like a human footprint. Father placed his narrow size 13 foot alongside, and the print was about 3 inches beyond that. The whole time he talked about how, quote, they just look like a human's foot, end quote, and that it's a big bear. I didn't know anything different. We'd already seen the Patty film on TV, but I never connected the dots. We were just inland of the Redwoods and an hour or so from Bluff Creek, where Patty's sighting had taken place a little further north. So off we went. We never hiked beyond the big, large gravel bend in the river that was curving left. As we started up, the bank on our right immediately began to rise to higher and higher heights above us. Trees lined the top of the very high gravel cliff, and the forest was thick everywhere in this Mendocino County area. As we moved upstream, I noticed that small rocks were tumbling down the steep gravel canyon from above. I said to Father, that bear must be following us up there. Rocks are falling. He's hard of hearing from behind around huge ships all of his life, so I was filling him in case he didn't hear it. It happened a couple more times, and each time I told him that it was staying with us up there. I tried to see the bear, but saw nothing. Father never looked. We were making slow going due to large quartz boulders. Heat and sand. But before we actually got around the bend in the river, Father kind of stopped and said he thought it looked farther than he expected, and for some reason we turned back. Was he nervous without a gun? I'll never know if it dawned on him that bears don't follow people like that, or if he had a feeling about the Patty film or what, but walked all the way back to the boat without dropping a line in the water. He never said another word about any of it. It wasn't until 50 years later, after I, having lived in Alaska now for over 40 years, and seen thousands of black and brown bear tracks, now know it was not a bear. I've had 2 visual sightings. First one in Northern California off Highway 20 in the mountains at dusk, riding with a friend, when a slim one ran across the road in front of us. I saw it a split second off the right side of the road, standing with its right shoulder sticking out and its right arm wrapped around a 3-foot fir trunk, peeking around looking at us as we approached. It was about 6 feet tall and dark with short hair. Before I could say anything, in a flash, it went down on all fours and booked it past the front of the car. My friend driving is a sports professor with fast reflexes, and by the time he stomped on the brakes, it was past his side of the car and gone into the bushes. He said, "Did you just see what I saw?" I said, "Yes." Then he said, "We do not see anything. We don't talk to anyone about it." I said, "Yep, I got it." We drove in utter silence to a local restaurant, and on the way back to Nevada City, where he grabbed 2 napkins and 2 pens, and when we sat down, he pushed one set to me. Since we are both artists, I knew he wanted me to draw what I saw. We did, and switched papers across the booth table, and they were identical, Steve. No ears, no snout, round head, elbows halfway down its arms, back level, slim legs with knees. Its hands were bent under because I could not see pads, with flashing toe/claws. Its feet were bent like it was running on its front half of the foot. Undercarriage belly sloped up like a dog or a greyhound. A young one that had not filled out yet. We had seen a blackie earlier in the afternoon. We both knew what they looked like, so it wasn't that. A blackie meaning a black bear, no doubt. And that didn't run from us, and has sloped shoulders, ears, and a snout, and a plush coat. And the last sighting, I swear, was a dream. 2 summers ago in Alaska, south of Anchorage, while stopped waiting for the road crew as they were pulling up stanchions that hold up the railings along the Turnagain Arm on the right ocean side of the road, I was gazing straight at the cliffs on the left. Just as we began to move, I spotted 2 of them standing side by side. Just as one of them moved behind the other to switch sides as they watched, fixated upon the road crew's work. It was summer, and they appeared all black with round heads and no neck, very wide shoulders and husky build. All I saw was from the chest up as they stood behind a rock bench. 2 other things happened to me, again one in Alaska, but I did not remember the first one that happened in Downeyville near my claim in California until this most recent one flashed me back to it. 2 summers ago, I was in a little old mining community, but up a mining camp road. I'm going to start that in 1 second, all right, because I have to add to this. So, get this one, and I don't think I've shared this before. Actually, I know I haven't shared this detail before. So here I am, way back when I'm developing my hunting app, and one of my goals was to get wild huntable rams of the Grand Slammer rams. So you have desert bighorn, Rocky Mountain bighorn, stone sheep, and Dall sheep. There's the 4 subspecies of mountain sheep, and I wanted to get every single one of them live and wild on trail cameras. It's just a goal I had, and as well the adventure that it takes to do it, right? I flew to Anchorage, rented a car, drove down Turnagain Arm, right? And I parked and I hiked up a drain on the Anchorage side of another popular drain with a hiking trail going up through the middle of it. And I went through the most nastiest dog shit slope of 8-10 foot deep willow patches. I was literally climbing on top of willow branches straight up a slope for I don't know how long. Got through that shit, and I was just busting out into the open, And down in the willow, there was one big spruce tree all by itself in the willow. And underneath that spruce tree was doll sheep, the mountain sheep fur, white. All over, they were rubbing everywhere. On the rock slope against the tree and the old stout broken off branches from snow load. And I left 3 or 4 trail cameras under that tree. There is no freaking way a human being was going to find those cameras in that tree. You'd have to be a complete dumbass to go up there, like me. And I left them there. And then I continued up, made it to in the Alpine, and went all the way to Headland into those mountains, into the Chugach Mountains. And I went up and over into the next drain, the head of the next drain, all the way down to the bottom, up the other side to the trail, and I hiked out the next drain over. Went back a year later, all the cameras were gone. Every one of them, not a trace. What? That creeped me out. No, it doesn't sound like much to many people here, but that creeped me out. What the hell, right? Now, start the next part of this email. So go figure. Sighting, right, basically sounds like right where I parked. 2 other sightings happened to me, again one in Alaska, but I do not remember the first one that happened in Downeyville near my claim in California, until this most recent one flashed me back to it. 2 summers ago, I was in a little old mining community, but up a mining camp road outside of Anchorage about 2 hours. I had spent the night in my auto since I was still too scared to sleep outside, ate breakfast and had a coffee. I put my day pack on, had my 5-gallon bucket of tools and plans to prospect. I laid my loaded .44 in his leather holster atop the bucket and grabbed a stout stick to make my way down, over the humps, and brush to the creek. I took a pic with myself for my daughter, who's tired of looking at shots of the earth and wants more of me. Just before I left camp, a small unmarked, dark, drab-colored helicopter flew low from the direction of the creek straight across camp and out of sight. I got to the creek, put down my bucket and dropped my pack. I had hip waders on so I could explore the other side of the creek, which has a tall, solid rock cliff about 30 feet high of horizontal shale covered in thick moss. Straight across and downstream, it was only that, without obstructions. I made it across the slippery rocks with 3-point stick, inspected the gravel and cliff, then turned to come back. When I got back to my bucket and pack, I began to look a bit upstream. Large trees of the forest lined the top of the cliff, and many had fallen over into the creek, lying crisscrossed, top to bottom, with nestling trees and bushes growing up from them. I began to look for old tunnels or workings from miners. As I began to focus on a dark area inside the piles of trees and their trunks partway up the cliff, thinking of how I could get up there to check it out, it all happened so fast. I'm still in the creek at the edge near the bucket. When I began to get disoriented, I felt woozy. I staggered over to the dry area and immediately sat down. Now I was fully dizzy. It was as if someone had twirled me around 10 times and let me loose. It felt like I was an oval, swirling forward and back, not a round one. I tried to lie down, but nope. I had my head between my knees. Nope, that didn't help. I gained thought. Is this my heart? What did I eat this morning? Am I sick? I do not have a heart issue. So that was it. I thought. It's a Sasquatch. In the same instant that I remembered the previous incident, I knew that there was one or more beings hiding in that dark area behind those fallen trees. I struggled up. I faced the dark area across the creek behind the fallen trunks and trees and raised my arms out wide toward it. My hands were open facing it. I began to apologize for scaring him and his family over and over, moving my open hands in a slow, subservient, supplicating way, saying, "I'm so sorry. Baby, I didn't mean to scare you and your family. I'm going to leave now, I'm sorry." I struggled my backpack on and managed to bend over to get to the walking stick and my bucket. When I saw my gun, I thought, oh my gosh, they see my gun. That's not going to help the issue. So I made a point to ignore it and kept my hands away from it. I made it back to my vehicle, managed to take all the tarps down off of it, shoved all my gear in and got in. I phoned a buddy that can find me anywhere in Alaska if needed, and told him that if I don't call back in 2 hours, to come looking for me. If I had not read all of Bobby's and listened to your videos, I probably would never have put the whole picture into place. As soon as I was a quarter mile down the rough road, all symptoms were gone. I took out my cell phone to look at the pic I had taken just before walking over to the creek, and there was no indication that I was sick or tired or anything else. I thought back to the helicopter. Was it after it or them? It probably read my mind about thinking if I would climb up there to see if there was a miner's drift tunnel and decided to stop me by making me unable to do it. This is a long one, and is a lot of the reason I waited so long. I hope it read well enough for you. If you do read it, I know other incidents firsthand from others here in Alaska and the Downeyville area in California. And you are right. If you don't ask in an earnest, curious way, people will not say anything. Excuse me. As a prospector part-time, I know miners that have had cones and pebbles tossed at them. Excuse me, of strange noises of something pacing them out of camp on their way to town. Quote, bears, end quote, sitting watching them from high up on Bouldery Hilltop. A woman who has one near her home in California or in remote Alaska up the Wood River. I'm a woman. End of email, and there you go. Another member of the Club of No Return, right? There's a bunch of patterns in there. The dizziness part in the timber in the forest, I don't envy that experience. I don't think I need to experience that myself. And there you go. Filling in puzzle pieces for many. I'm curious to know if there's many other people who have had an experience in the Turnagain Arm, the Chugach Mountains. If anybody's out there that has, I want to hear about it, okay? Please email me. Share my story at howtohunt.com. I still got trail cameras up there too. I want to go back up there and go get them. If I can find them. Alaska. Here's another one. My 2 sightings of Sasquatch is the title of this email. This isn't too long. Hello Steve, I hope the story finds you in good health and good spirits. Please leave my name out of the story as I'm a business owner here in BC. And my story has not been received very well by most of the people I told it to. People are very quick to judge and ridicule others if they have not experienced the same situation. I'm an avid hunter and outdoorsman, and I have no problem identifying animals at long or short distances. I know what I saw. Alright. My first sighting of Sasquatch, this is the name we always used for them, it was in early February 2015. I was driving home in a bit of a hurry as I was late to pick up my son for his hockey practice. I was driving a stretch of BC Highway 97D that I drive pretty much every day for work. Now, I've been traveling on this highway most of my life, since the road was rebuilt in the 80s, so I'm quite familiar with the sights along the side of the road. On this particular evening, the sun was already down and it was getting hard to see off of the sides of the road. I drove around a corner and started down a straight stretch that was about 400 meters in length, and I saw it immediately. It was something out of place in my mind, something that I'd never seen there before. At first, from a distance, I thought I was looking at a moose that was standing facing directly towards me. It was too big to be anything else in my mind. It was standing in a clearing on the right-hand side of the road. As my car approached, I was expecting to see the back end of a moose, but it never materialized. The Sasquatch was perfectly outlined on the contrast of the snow. At my closest point, I was probably about 50 meters away, and I could clearly see muscle definition in his broad shoulders. There were long hairs hanging up his forearms, but the rest of his body was covered in short hair that seemed to be a reddish-brown in color. It appeared to be 8 feet tall and around 500 pounds. It didn't move a muscle as I drove by, as if it was hoping not to be seen, almost as if it had gotten caught off guard while trying to cross the highway. Other cars were driving towards me from the opposite direction, but I knew they would not see what I saw as the terrain blocked the view from their direction. They would have to drive past and turn to look behind them to see it. I continued to drive around the next corner as I tried to proceed and come to terms with what I had just seen. I struggled to understand it for about 2 kilometers before I could breathe again. I know there have been other sightings in our area over the years, but I think they are rare. Later that spring, late May I believe, I walked my 2 large dogs, 90 pounds and 120 pounds, down a dirt road that ran near the area where I had seen the Sasquatch in February. My dogs are always off leash while I walk them in the woods, and they run all over the place. Never more than about 100 meters away, but also never within 20 meters of me unless I recall them. The walk had started out in just this way for the first 40 minutes. Then suddenly, as we approached an area that had pockets of very thick trees and brush, both the dogs came running straight to me. They fell in beside me so close, they were touching my legs on either side and staring intently into the woods to our right. This is extremely unusual behavior, and they had never exhibited before. I merely got a strange feeling that I did not want to go any further down this road. We quickly turned around and headed back to the truck. Once we were a fair distance away from the thick brushy area, the dogs returned to their normal activity and behavior, and there was no longer a sense of danger. I've not walked back into this area since that day. I believe there was still a Sasquatch in the area on this day. My second encounter occurred in the early April 2022. I was out getting a truckload of firewood for an upcoming camping trip with my sweetheart. I was alone with my 2 dogs. Not the same 2 as the other 2 passed away a few years ago. However, they were also good-sized dogs at 70 and 110 pounds. I found a beautiful dead standing tree that I cut down. I then let the dogs out to run around and burn off some energy. At first, I couldn't get them to get out of the truck, which is totally weird. Then when I finally coaxed them out, they acted as if they had been scolded and crawled under the truck. I was totally confused, but I thought, okay, stay under there then. When I turned around to get my saw to start bucking up the tree, I caught some movement from the tree line in the corner of my eye. I guess that comes from years of being in the woods and hunting. I snapped my head in that direction just in time to see a blonde or light brown, hair-covered, giant man run between 2 clumps of trees. And my best guess would be around 7-8 feet tall and weighed around 400 to 500 pounds. It was very fast, covering about 50 meters in just a second or 2. I didn't get the feeling of impending danger this time though. The dogs eventually came out from under the truck, but did not wander more than 30 feet from me on this day. I loaded my truck with firewood and left with no further incidents. The fall of 2023, I went to this area to hunt for whitetails, as I had already tagged a mule deer earlier this season. Whitetails are difficult to find on public land in our area, so I walked cross country all over this area for many weeks. I spotted many deer, whitetail and mule deer, moose, bears, and coyotes. No signs of Sasquatch until the very last day of hunting season. That's when I decided to walk into the exact area that I had seen it last year. I hadn't made it more than 100 yards into the woods when I saw this structure. It looked like a bit haphazard and like a natural blowdown event, but upon closer inspection, which I did under a great deal of duress, I could see that the structure had been used by a large animal of some sort. Maybe a bit of a stretch, but I put 2 and 2 together. I'm no expert on the matter by any means, but I feel like I got this one right. It gave me an uneasy feeling being there, and I left without taking any pictures. I'll return one day and get some to send to you. As a side note, I have four trail cameras that I put up in that area all hunting season, and I have very little to show for it. There always seemed to be something wrong with the cameras. One would have a corrupt SD card. Have you ever had that? This is my first. 2 would have dead batteries, no pictures, even though I had replaced the batteries 2 weeks prior. One of the cameras straight up died. It's a newer camera that was working perfectly in another location earlier this year. Now it won't even turn on. I did eventually get some good footage, but very little after hunting season started. I should also tell you this area is near where other hunters frequent, but they never seem to go through this particular area. So the whitetails love to hide out in there. Well, that's my story in a nutshell. I love what you're doing. Keep up the good fight, my friend. I already received and loved the 2 products I bought from your store. Best regards, Ed. You know, I didn't realize I read this until the last 3 paragraphs. What's up to that? What's up with that? Let's have a look here. Please, Highway 99, Highway 97D. Let's have a look at where that is. Highway 97, oops. Highway 97D. Search. And I guess it's not going to take me anywhere near there because it's doing it from the other side of the planet, right? But I'm curious. So let's get back over here. Hang with me hang in there for a second, you guys. All right, so now I'm on the map of BC. Let's try that again. All right, I'm wasting people's time. Let me just Google it on the regular thing. Oh shit, my frickin' Wi-Fi is all turned off. That's why. Give me a second. Sorry. All right, so I see it on the map. So Logan Lake is south of Kamloops, British Columbia, which also puts it west of the Coquihalla Highway and east of the Highway number 1 and Spence's Bridge. Merritt to the south of that. So there you go. You're basically smack dab right in the middle of ground zero for I don't know how many people that have seen these beings in that chunk of real estate. That is basically all of that land surrounded by, if you kept the highway north, the highway from Cache Creek to Kamloops, the highway from Cache Creek to Spence's Bridge, the highway from Spence's Bridge to Merritt, and Merritt back up to Kamloops. Right in the middle of that is Logan Lake, and every single one of the stretches of highway has had I don't know how many freaking sightings around there. It's absolutely ridiculous. Spence's Bridge, well, the whole province, right? The whole province. But there you go, Logan Lake. Anybody else want to chime in for that area? Anyone else want to chime in, period? Do it. All right, just do it. And there you go, reread. Oops, why was it in here not marked as read? I do not have a clue. No biggie. Now, let's hear another one. Have we read this? I don't think so. I don't know. I'm going in. Ooh, it's fairly long. I'm going to do this one more, and then I'm going to get moving along here. Mark, this is red. This is titled Sabe in Northwest PA. This info share is for Steve Isdall and the current and future members of the Round Table of Knowledge. This sounds familiar. I began this with an urgent message. According to more than one internet report, tinnitus leads to dementia within 3 years. That's why I'm rereading everything. I'm kidding. And tinnitus is reportedly curable. My best friend succumbed to cognitive impairment as of November 2022. He was 69 then. He was in a memory care hospice now. His decline in the last 18 months has been rapid and heartbreaking. Fortunately, and prior to his decline, we had often reflected on our good luck and good times. We debated the smallest details of our shared or solo out-of-doors events. Among, and often despite our variations of adventures, our 55 years of friendship gave us a notion of how many different ways any story might go, yet neither of us expected his impairment. These recent changes put an abrupt end to our trips, conversations, our debates, and reminiscing evenings. Yes, we fumbled the ball. We did not write down his solo Sabe encounter when it happened, nor did we share it with others. Sadly, his solo Sabe sighting is firmly sealed in his mind, even though it occurred 36 years ago. I hope this influence story can help others. Despite his details lost, I send this to you all with some regrets and reasons. Here's what I recall of his story. 1987, Ralph had been going with me to a certain small village in northwestern Pennsylvania for 17 years. At 34, it was not his first solo trip. His choice of camping location turned out to be very important. No other water's edge location had such a protective element for his safe viewing elevation. Tionesta is an Iroquois word meaning the home of the wolves. Visitors and residents are greeted to the town of Tionesta with a sign reading, "A special place with a relaxed pace." And yes, it very much was. He spent his hours past sunset, 8 p.m. in mid-August, at his campfire. The fire had waned down to hot coals, but the smoke and smell was being pulled downhill and also downstream from the forest floor by the sunset's last gasp breezes. His first hint that something unusual was on its way was when Ralph heard a repeated huffing sound. Something, he said, that was bigger and way louder than any breathing sounds, deer snorts, for example, that he had ever heard. It was getting closer to him quickly. He recalled that the flat surface of the Tionesta Creek seemed to reflect those sounds upwards onto both creek banks and from there into the forests. Ralph peeked over the top of the high bank of the creek, Tionesta. I fact-checked his memory on stellarium. It confirmed that a waxing moon was due south of his campsite on 8/14/1986. The waxing moon illuminated a creature, or the being, that he saw walking upright on 2 feet. It was following the north and western edge of that waterway, walking upstream and towards him. At his first sight of the thing, it was within 50 yards. From his darkened location, Ralph leaned left to view it. He hoped that the being was not tall enough to see his head or his movements above the 15-foot high creek bank. It did not seem to see his low and glowing cooking fire either. Ralph said that he was sitting on the ground and that he was peeking over the embankment to view it. When Ralph first told me that it was huffing, we pondered. If the campfire smoke had filled his larger nose and lungs and had it impaired its huge capacity breathing. Ralph said that it walked with direct and purpose, full strides, as if it was on a mission. Regardless, it went by as if it did not know or care that Ralph was there. Perhaps it was doubly distracted by the sounds of the creek and or because its sense of smell was overwhelmed by the ebbing campfire and its smoke. Despite his current impaired mental status, Ralph still says it was creepy to see it, with an empathetic mood. It was at least 8 to 9 feet tall. It moved oddly, as if it was proportioned wrong, or at least differently by Ralph's thinking. Its arms were bent. Ralph said as if to keep its hands out of the water. His legs were mostly concealed by the water, but due to its bent over form, if it could have straightened up, it could have been a bit taller. The creek, the Tionesta, as we refer to it, is about 200 feet wide at that location. A creek. It sounds like a river to me. It's a crossing point that it is possibly louder due to the faster flow of water. The Tionesta Creek is 61.9 miles long. When it was about 100 feet away from him, it took a 45-degree course change, which would, in our thinking, add about 41% more time and distance for my friend to see it and to watch it. Ralph watched it wade through the 5-foot deep water with ease. After our discussions, we think that it traveled about 282 feet, our estimate, in the water section alone. So in total, his sighting of it was a bit more than 500 feet before it walked up the opposite side of the creek and across the old narrow gauge railway grade to enter a swamp just upstream of Ralph's position. As best as he can recall, he placed the entire sighting as within 200 feet of him. But my mathematic theory, I asked Ralph if he thought it was 100 feet from him when it reached mid-creek, and he agreed with that notion. but we also reasoned that it was only 70 feet from him, when it was 1/4 of the way across the creek. Our decades of adventures and misadventures did not prepare either of us for such challenges, meaning the Sabe and Ralph's cognitive decline. Sadly, since Ralph's mind holds the best possible record of that encounter. For that reason, I recommend that others share, to either write or video or audio record their stories ASAP for both friends and family, and as well to aid our roundtable of common knowledge. We are glad to finally have a place and people to send and to share this with. Ralph and Joe, I sent it all. Ralph and I met in 1968, and I convinced him to visit my unique and early mentors in that place, and in that sharing, he and I would gain some wisdom, as well as a deep faith, a motto of truth and trust in each other. That formula was a foremost part of our friendship. During our 55 years, by sharing our knowledge, experiences, and insights, we had found many possible answers, and we asked even more questions that neither of us would have ever found on our own. Despite our preferences for being in cool green forests, our many trips have always fallen far short of us having a steady and a daily dose of a reoccurring and rural life. The mentors that my father introduced to me to at age 8 were willing to adopt my friend and to school him as well. Despite that fortunate aid and friendship, we, meaning Ralph and I, have shared many outings. 8 since 1968. We, meaning Ralph and I, would eventually see 69 black bears, mostly at night in Pennsylvania. On far fewer incidents, we were harassed and shot at by humans. Black bears, we would learn, are much better behaved than humans. They also seem to be much more curious and more intelligent than some humans. Pickles are more intelligent than some humans. All had. Our acidified, city-centered lives limited our outdoors trips to being part-time adventures. At least as compared to the rural residents who were our mentors, true friendships with those locals or between us were well and widely based. But Ralph's newest tests and mine are more challenging than our worst outings ever were. My memories are partially backed up in log book entries. There were times when we played the cards and were given. There were times when we played the cards we were given, and there were also times when neither of us wanted to swap, play, or hold the cards we were dealt. The location of Ralph's sighting was eventually given to indigenous members of the Seneca/Iroquois tribes. That happened years later when Ralph and I visited the Seneca/Iroquois National Museum in Salamanca, New York. Salamanca, New York. They were happy to add Ralph's information to their ongoing record keeping. At that time and during our conversations with those indigenous people, other locations and sightings were mentioned. And in our hindsight and conversations, Ralph and I formulated a possible travel route from those points to connect with other points. Connecting those known sighting spots lays out a possible travel route into New York. It would provide a cloaked travel route into the eastern side of the Kinzua Lake area, Kinzua Lake area, without requiring a major river crossing. By beginning at Ralph's sighting, the route leads 7 miles to the geocenter of the Allegheny National Forest, then to the Ludlow Fish Drop by 13.4 miles. To the next point, Red Bridge Fishing Area, distance of 18.15 miles, then at Sugar Run, and the eastern end of that bay at Route 321 at 25.69 miles traveled, then to New York borderline, 33.64 miles, then reaching Salamanca, New York at 48 miles total hike distance. We spent 29 years of mid-August for our Bear and Meteors trips between 1990 and 2019. On one occasion, Ralph and I sat along the rural road, Sugar Run, and the eastern end of that bay, Route 321. Our chairs both face the Perseid meteor shower. That location had us both fidgeting, super aware, alert, and frighteningly silent. I refused to look away to see my watch as those odd, pensive moments continued. Ralph asked me, "How do you feel?" My answer was, "Not welcome." "Me neither," he agreed, and we left that skywatch / meteor watch position. And we somehow knew it weren't bears. Just 20 minutes of what you term as pressure had passed. I'd gone to that small village for 10 years before taking Ralph there. When I was 18, I believe in what he reported seeing. I have some regrets as to not being with him at that time, but fate and chance are among the wild cards we are dealt with in life. I think that because Ralph is and was always more spiritual than I, that any Sabe was more likely to tag him to keep track of him for future reference. End of email. There you go. Sorry to hear that about your partner, man. But there's always the pluses, right? At least you had to have those adventures, which are gold. And there you go. Ralph is and will remain a member of the Club of No Return, right? Once you know, you know. There you go. So many emails here. It's absolutely stunning. And there you go. All right, I'm done for reading for today. But I'm going to read more. I'm going to share more. I guess I'd probably get my butt in gear and start texting people and let them know I'm still alive. But I'll tell you what, when you jump out of the bubble, you jump out of your bubble, you're out. And you leave everyone and everything in it, and you look in it from the outside and figure your shit out. That's what I've been doing. So, I have no guilt. Anyway. So many topics I could pick up. People are still adamant about the 8, 9, 10 foot tall beings at a shopping mall in Miami, right? I think if that really went down, you'd probably be hearing a shit pile of regular civilian type flooding the internet with their testimonies, don't you think? Especially if there was a ring of cop cars all over the place. That would give them more confidence to speak openly, because it wasn't just them seeing something like that alone. I don't know, I haven't really looked into it too much myself, but there's a bunch of people out there claiming to be talking to people firsthand that seen these crazy beings. Don't know. Haven't a clue. What else? This area where I am right now, this is a classic winter destination for vacationers from Europe, Russia, China, Malaysia, South Korea, Germany, Britain, the UK, Australia, everywhere. And there is a very visual, obvious lack of people here. And when you see it, when you travel to the other side of the world, and you've been here when it's bonkers crazy with happy people from all over the world, and then you see, and there's no COVID stopping traveling, and then it's like, it kind of kicks you in the guts in a way when you realize this is 100% due to wars. The lack of people here. It's sad. It's a very sad thing to see, because you're not just reading about it online, you're not seeing reports online. You are 100% firsthand seeing the difference made from the 1% of the world initiating, funding, and encouraging the killing of people. It's bullshit. It sucks. It's sad. It's frustrating. It's too bad, right? How many people decide to... Who is it that creates the wars, starts the wars, but who's the ones that fight them? It's never the people that start them. Ever. That's bullshit. They should all be hanging. Every one of them. The absolute ultimate clue that you are a full-on loser and a failure as a so-called leader in any country is when your country is at or funds war of any kind anywhere. That is when you know you are a loser and a failure. Right? Prove me wrong. Anyway, there you go. I'll be back tomorrow. And I hope that somebody's got some more knowledge that they want to share with other people. Experience, whatever you got, share it. Share my story at howtohunt.com. I'll be back. crazy. It's been about the easiest bow kill of my entire existence.